Hello there, you're back. My name is Arjuneus, and today's topic request comes from Gwenny on Patreon. I'm going to get more intimate today and share my entire journey from how I went from a meat eater to a vegetarian and finally a vegan. Perhaps my story might serve as some guidance for those who are looking to walk a similar path. So sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Now, this transition really began during a mindset shift during a very dark period in my childhood. My family was a shit show. My best friend committed suicide. I was suffering through insomnia and depression. It was just a bad time. But when I stumbled upon gory footage of animal cruelty, it allowed me to turn my pain into power. How? Well, I realized that my problems were not as bad compared to the sadistic abuse happening in a factory farm, or as I call it, a death camp. Now, this mindset shift wasn't immediate. It took years, really, but I found myself as a vegetarian at the age of 14. That was my first phase. And that was partly due to the factory farm footage I saw, and partly due to Hinduism, actually. Now, I'm not religious, but I noticed that Hinduism encourages vegetarianism, and many peaceful ancient civilizations followed this practice. So it led me to think that, well, all right, maybe life is better as a vegetarian. My mom and sister were already vegetarians, so it was actually pretty easy being a vegetarian at home, but it was during school that I was put to the test, where I naturally stood out as the only vegetarian on the varsity football team. Now, as a skinny guy, you could imagine that my coaches pressured me a lot to eat meat, especially at luncheons with the team, but my resistance was foundational to forging my discipline. And when I look back at school and stuff like that, the people that followed the crowd only really got as far as the crowd. They ended up in the same predictable life, same predictable 9 to 5, same divorces, same story, same bullshit. But me resisting the crowd allowed me to go in my own path and find myself in really exciting places that not many people have ever discovered. And so having that discipline on ethics and standing my ground was absolutely pivotal to shaping the course of my entire life. And that eventually led me to challenge myself even further and become a fearless individual and go out and conquer my fear of public speaking before I went to go chase my dreams. You would be surprised, but I used to have severe anxiety for just any type of public speaking activity at all, but so glad I conquered it. That's why I wrote in my book, before you chase your dreams, chase your demons, because those demons of anxiety, of fear, of depression, they're going to haunt you your entire life until you stand your ground and actually face them. So in 11th grade, I joined the speech and debate team, where I won first place multiple times for my speech on vegetarianism, which eventually led me to become the graduation speaker. Then they told me to put all my speeches on YouTube, which evolved through time into this very channel. So this rebellious warrior mentality is like a snowball effect that not only lifted me out of my dark times, but helped me transform into a new form. It's like a metaphorical metamorphosis from Arjun to Arjuneus. So the lesson here is really the spirals that I went through, right? When you're depressed, when you're going through a lot of shit, you start drinking, doing drugs, you fall into a negative spiral, right? Everything just starts getting worse and worse, and you get institutionalized into that negative spiral. But conversely, there's positive spirals where if you take care of your health, you conquer your fears, you conquer your anxieties, start exercising, you do all these things, it leads to one positive thing after another, and eventually, before you know it, you are in an upward spiral toward a self-fulfilling life. And even when you have bad days, you are so grateful to see how far you've come from the negative spiral that you were once in. But you got to put in the initial work and be willing to go through the pain in order for that spiral to shoot you into a better life. But I bet you're wondering, why and how did I go vegan along the way, right? So at the age of 20 is when I actually realized that vegan is the new vegetarian. I didn't want to go vegan, but I knew it was the right thing to do in order to stay true to my ideals and really stand for something even if I'm hated for it, as opposed to being a hypocrite as a vegetarian that still supports the dairy industry. Especially back then, people did not respect vegans. But we've come a long way, but it was, I think it's a lot easier to be a vegan nowadays than it was 10 years ago. But it was Gary Yourofsky's speech that made me realize that the meat and dairy industry are actually the same entity and that they have to be stopped because they lead to animal cruelty, poison our food and water, and overall lower the vibration of our civilization. One thing that stuck out to me is that throughout history, the greatest atrocities happened because we chose to hide behind conformity rather than doing what's right. And he was one of the OG vegans, right? So I highly recommend watching his speech because it explains a lot of the misconceptions about veganism very well, and he articulates it very nicely. So I would keep coming back to his speeches and interviews as I would transition into veganism. And I did this by myself. No one was vegan with me. But it's interesting because I almost started fixating on veganism because it started to align with almost every piece of wisdom and moral theme and lesson that I had learned throughout my life up to that point. I think resisting the temptations of cheese and eggs and bacon was really foundational for establishing that discipline going forward in my life. I always say that if you can control what goes into your mouth and what comes out of your mouth, you can accomplish virtually anything in your life. Because at the end of the day, no matter how bad things get, you can't control or force anyone to do anything. The only thing you can control is your mind and how you respond to the various stimuli in your environment. So that's that. And there's so many moral themes I can talk about that aligned with me when I was being introduced to veganism, but I want to tell you about the main one that I think everyone knows, because this golden rule is found in every tradition, it's found in every culture, it's found in every religion. And the golden rule is to treat others the way you wish to be treated. Now, it's articulated differently in other parts of the world, but that is essentially the basis of the concept. Treat others the way you wish to be treated. So perhaps if we put ourselves into the shoes of a chicken, cow, or pig, we would be more cautious of where we spend our money. Like I explained in my last video, we are all pieces of the same universal source. We are separated by our physical senses and material bodies. But all these animals you eat could very well be you in the next birth. But for anyone who's watching this video and is considering transitioning, I would say that the one piece of advice I would give you is consider investing in vegan friends. It tremendously helped for me, but I have seen so many people drop out of veganism just because they didn't have that support of having vegan friends. I mean, socially, it kind of makes sense because you are the average of the 5 people you hang around the most. And it also prevents you from the temptation when someone says, oh, just have this cheese pizza just once, it's fun, we're having a party. But here's the other important thing. So I've been part of so many different clubs, sports teams, dance teams throughout my life, and there's always some sort of ridiculous drama or backstabbing that eventually happens once you discover the political nature of these communities and the unspoken rules. So I figured I would be part of a community that has a more ethical and grounded approach to being more conscious, so that I don't have to worry about being backstabbed all the time. Not to say it doesn't completely happen, but it's a far more peaceful community than the other communities I've been part of in my experience. Funny thing is, some vegans I don't even like. They're so cringe to me. Like, they'll say stuff like, hey guys, we should be nice to everyone and be positive. The f*** you gotta be positive about everything. Be negative. But then it's like, all right, I'd rather be friends with this guy than that douchebag. So it's all good. Investing in vegan friends is like building your Justice League. You need people who are strong, ethical, and willing to put their ego aside in order to do what's right and have your back. So to sum it all up, going vegan for me was a big mindset shift that started with not wanting to take any part in unnecessary animal cruelty, so that I have a clear sense of what my principles are. It was not easy, especially when veganism wasn't that big of a movement back then, and they didn't have as many alternatives as they do today, but it was definitely worth it. And if you're watching this, if you think going vegan is hard right now, you should imagine how hard it was 10, 15 years ago for people to go vegan, when there was barely any development for vegan alternatives. But of course, you have to definitely be patient and persistent with it. Take small steps, find a supportive community, and remind yourself every day before you eat why you are doing this, so that you don't fall into the matrix. It's for a noble cause that's much bigger than yourself. You're helping the most oppressed group of individuals throughout entire history, more oppressed than humans have ever been. It's going to benefit the planet that your future kids are going to be living on, and it's going to be better for your mental and physical health down the line to some degree. So I hope my story sheds some light on the journey toward veganism. And again, this topic was requested by Gwenny on Patreon, so you could thank Gwenny in the comments down below for this video. And listen, guys, if you have any topic requests that you want me to do, be sure to check me out on Patreon, where you can get access to early content, your name at the end of my videos, cool rewards and sneak peeks, and so much more. So if you like my content, that's the best way to support me, because I get banned almost every year on something. And with that, I will see you guys next time. Peace begins on your dinner plate.